Good old homemade mashed potatoes are an American classic. But are they? American, I mean. Did you know that potatoes aren't American at all? Actually, they come from the South American countries, Chile and Peru. We could thank these countries for gifting us these tasty tubers. But we can thank America for the final dish we eat today. Reality is, a good old homemade mashed potato only consists of 4 ingredients: potatoes, butter, cream, and salt. That's all you really need. But what if you wanted to elevate your mashed potato recipe for the holidays? Or any time of year? I mean, why not this weekend, right? Well, I have some wonderfully mouth-watering suggestions that will entice your taste buds and make kids and adults both alike beg for more. My 2A holiday mashed potatoes with suggestions will make you change the way you look at mashed potatoes. Not only that, but with my recommendations, you will never need gravy again. How does this sound as potential potato enhancements? Roasted garlic, sage-infused butter, cream cheese, cheddar cheese, sour cream, crispy fried sage, and the fluffiest, lightest potatoes you can imagine. Thanks to a potato ricer. In addition, how would you feel about garlic and herb goat cheese, grated Parmesan or Pecorino, crispy fried pancetta, or bacon? All of these can elevate your potato recipe. However, I'm not so sure they would all work at once. Now this is what I call potato paradise. Welcome to Summer Bakes the World. Summer here, baking traditional dishes from around the world, providing some history and lots of tips. So join me on this journey, whether in my kitchen or yours, and together we can discover the world. Today's bake is a 2-for-1 deal. That's right, we're going to use one basic mashed potato recipe. We're going to divide it in half. One is going to be a cheesy baked casserole, and the other is going to be a light and fluffy creamy potato topped with butter and sage. My recipe and variations will hit the simplest of taste buds like our kiddos to the more mature like taste buds. So how does that sound? You can make one basic potato dish for all to enjoy. So here we go. Let's look at the base ingredients for our 2 types of potatoes that we're focusing on today. A 5-pound bag of potatoes, russet or Yukon Gold, are the best for mashed potatoes because the starch and dryness causes them to break down more easily, thus making them lighter than other types of potatoes. We also have a whole head of garlic, cream cheese at room temperature, butter at room temperature, milk or half and half, your choice, salt, and sour cream. This is the basis of our recipe today. Since we're making our potatoes 2 ways today, we're going to finish them off each with different ingredients. Not only that, but one will be baked in the oven and the other will be kept warm in a crock pot until ready to eat. Our finishing ingredients for each include cheddar cheese, fresh sage, butter, and olive oil. Our first step for this recipe is to roast the garlic. So we need to preheat our oven to 400 degrees. And I'm actually just using my toaster oven. It's easy and it doesn't heat up the whole house. So we're gonna use a whole garlic clove. And as you notice, it has still quite a bit of paper on it. So I'm gonna tear off some of the paper and then we're gonna cut about 1/4 to 1/2 inch off of the end where the root is, because we wanna be able to expose our cloves. Okay. We chopped off the top. We're gonna discard that. Even though some of our cloves fell apart, it's okay because they're all gonna cook together anyway. It actually helps us to get rid of some of the paper. So if they don't stay all intact, it's all right. If they do, that's fine too. So you wanna get a sheet of foil. You're gonna put your cloves on top of it. So we're just gonna drizzle some olive oil on top. Just kind of rub it in to make sure that the cloves have nice coating of olive oil. And then we're gonna sprinkle on a little bit of salt, season it some. And then we're just gonna wrap it up, like so. Make sure that you can access it easily so that you can check it in the oven. So I have it sealed, but everything is closed from the top so I can open it from the top when I wanna check it. We're gonna put in the oven for 30 minutes to an hour. I actually like to put mine in for an hour, but check it at the 30-minute mark. If it's caramelized as much as you want it to be, take it out then. If not, just let it go and check it every 10 minutes. And I do usually put it on a baking pan of some kind. So our second step is to prep the potatoes. We're gonna peel and dice them. A lot of times I prefer not to peel my potatoes because my husband and I like the nutritional value that the skin provides. For this recipe, we want light and fluffy potatoes. So we are gonna peel them, dice them, and then boil them in water. Our garlic is roasted nicely, and in the meantime, we peeled our potatoes and cut them up. So this is about the size that I cut my potatoes. They should be somewhat uniform, but when you're testing them for doneness, just use a knife and poke the biggest ones you have to see that they're done. We are using 5 pounds of potatoes here because we are making 2 dishes. Now the next step is to cover them with water. You want to cover your potatoes with cold water. Yes, cold, not hot. Hot water will cause them to cook unevenly, with the outer potato edge cooking more quickly. So in order to make them uniformly heated up, then we're going to use cold water. You also want to add salt, and lots of salt. We're talking salinity of the sea salt. We want to be able to taste this water, and it should taste like the sea once we put the water and the salt in it. So by adding the salt now, you don't have to add as much salt at the end, because the starchy granules in the potato are going to swell and they're going to absorb that salty water. We've added our cold water, and we put enough water in that it covers the top of the potatoes, and we're going to add our salt. And I'm actually going to put about a tablespoon of salt in here. We stir it in for a bit. Just dip your finger in. There's actually not enough salt in there. I'm going to do a little bit more salt. I'm going to use a spoon to taste it this time. All right, that's good. So that was about a tablespoon and a quarter of salt that I added. We're going to put this over the high heat, bring the potatoes to a boil, reduce the heat down to medium or even lower if need to, just until it's bubbly, and then we're going to set the timer for 15 minutes once it starts to boil. So the garlic is still roasting, the potatoes are sitting over on the stove on high waiting to boil, and I've just turned my crock pot on warm because we want to put our potatoes, once we mash them, into a warm environment. So remember, half will go into the oven and the other half will go into a crock pot where they stay warm until we're ready to eat them. Warm crock pot, not cold. Cold will cool them down, and then it takes time to warm them back up. So to preheat your crock pot before you put your food in it. While everything is being warmed up and cooking, we're going to prepare our big bowl of butter and cream cheese for the potatoes. In a large bowl where we are going to put our potatoes, we're going to add a stick of butter, and we're just going to quickly just cut through it a little bit because the heat of the potatoes will melt the butter, but we want to give it a little bit of a start. And then we're going to add an 8-ounce package of cream cheese. Now that is pretty soft. And again, just cut it up a bit just to help the potatoes melt it a little easier. Now our bowl's ready for our potatoes. The garlic just came out of the oven. It is now roasted and caramelized. We're just going to let it set aside and cool for a little bit before we touch it because it'll be too warm for our hands. The potato timer just went off, so we're going to take a look at the potatoes and see if they're done. So I just grabbed 2 large potatoes that I had in my pot, and I'm just going to take a knife and slice through them, and they slice very easily, so they are done. Now we're going to just drain them in a colander over the sink, and we want to drain them really well. We want to get as much water out of them as we can because we don't want our potatoes to be mushy. So let's drain them, and then we're going to rice them to get that nice, light, fluffy potato texture. How do we get that light, nice, fluffy potato that's just silky smooth? Well, it's a ricer. Why is it called a ricer? Because we don't make rice with it. It's just that we use attachments that make our vegetables look like rice when they come out of the ricer. So basically what a ricer does is it eliminates some of the moisture, and it makes the potatoes so fine that it's easy to mix them up. You don't have to do any mashing and make them dense. You just whip them up with whatever ingredients you put in them, and it just keeps them light and fluffy. So it's a little bit messy of a technique to do, but I'll show you how, and it is totally worth it. So here we go. This is how we use a ricer. It comes with multiple attachments, so I'm just going to use the one that actually looks like rice holes, and then just stick it into the ricer, and then it comes with another little attachment that holds everything down. And this is where we're going to put our potatoes. Now, there are a couple ways that you could do this. I'm actually using cut up potatoes, but I do know people who will boil a whole potato. They put the whole potato in here, and then they just mash the whole potato. That's one way you can do it. But since I chose to cook mine a little quicker and I cut them up, then that's the way we're going to use it today. So all you do, I'll show you quickly how to do it. I've got my colander and my potatoes in it in the sink. Then I'm just going to scoop my potatoes into my ricer here. And we're going to add our garlic in a minute too, but we're just going to start with potatoes to get it going. So you get a nice healthy dose of potatoes in there, and then all you do is just squeeze out the potato. And that's it. Notice it looks just like rice. That's why they call it ricing potatoes. You're not actually doing anything with the rice. And then we just continue to do that with the rest of our potatoes. The heat of the potatoes is going to melt our butter and our cream cheese. Notice how quick and easy that just pops out of there because those potatoes are so nice and soft and cooked through. As we're ricing our potatoes, we're gonna stop for a moment and we're gonna take a look at our garlic because we're gonna rice the garlic with the potatoes as well. So I let my garlic go for an hour. It was actually good about 40 minutes, but I really wanted that caramelization. So look how beautiful that caramelized garlic is. And notice we had some pieces that broke off, and look, they came right out of the shell, just like that, out of the skin. Look how beautiful that roasted garlic is. Oh, you can just imagine how wonderful it tastes. Look, they just pop out of the skins. Doesn't take any effort to get them out of there. So basically, that's all we're doing. We're gonna continue popping the garlic out of their skins. And then if you've got the whole piece of garlic here with the skin, just squeeze the end of it, and a lot of them will come out at once. And if they don't, just grab a little fork or something sharp and pull them out, and they'll be just fine. Okay, so now we're gonna add them to the ricer with the potatoes. All right, so we're gonna add in some potato. Then we're gonna put in some of our garlic. Okay, just mix them up here. Add some more potato. All right, so it's pretty much full. And now let's just put it all together. You can see that garlic coming out. Little caramelization coming out with the ricing of the potato. There's going to be a little bit of skin left in the container. See, like it did leave. Look at that that really caramelized piece there. You could eat that if you wanted to. All right, we're going to continue ricing our potatoes and our garlic, and we'll see what it looks like when it's done. Our potatoes and garlic have all been riced. Look at that. You could see a little bit of the darkness from the caramelized onion, and then the potatoes, they look like rice. They're just sitting on top. So the next step is we're going to add 3 teaspoons of salt. Sounds like a lot, but remember we have 5 pounds of potatoes here. You could always adjust the salt if it's a little too salty for you. It's up to you, but I find that it's just fine. So let's lightly mix this up because remember we have our butter and our cream cheese at the bottom. And then we're gonna add sour cream and milk. I want to use half and half, but you could just use milk. Any milk is fine. I've used skim milk, I've used whole milk, and of course I'm gonna use or half and half. So we're going to heat up the milk because we don't want to cool down our potatoes. We want to keep them nice and warm. So we're going to heat up the milk in the microwave. You could put it heat it up on the stove too. And then we're going to add the sour cream to it, and then we're going to mix it up even more, and then we're going to taste it. We're going to add about a cup of sour cream and then a 1/4 cup of heated half and half. You might want to add more as you're working through your potatoes. That way, if you feel like they're not quite creamy enough, then you can add, or they need more liquid, you can add a little bit more liquid to it. But this is usually plenty that I find. It's going to depend on your environment, your humidity, how much water is still in your potatoes. So those are all factors that play into how much liquid that you put in. So we're just going to try not to mix this up too much, but I do want to make sure everything gets mixed in. And then we'll give it a quick little taste, decide if we need to add any more seasoning. And then we're going to divide it into our casserole and then put the other half into our slow cooker to make sure that they stay warm while we prepare our saged butter. All right, I want you to see something here. Look how velvety these things are. They're so light. Here's what's weird when you rice potatoes is that there's 5 pounds of potatoes in here, but I feel like the spoon just drags right through it as though there's like hardly any weight there. It is so silky smooth. All right, so we're gonna get a quick little taste. Actually, they taste perfect. So now we're gonna divide it. We're gonna put half of them into our slow cooker to keep them warm. So I'm just gonna put my heated slow cooker bowl here. Now we're just gonna eyeball, we just wanna put like half in here. The slow cooker will just keep these warm and keep them nice and fluffy. And I just have my slow cooker on warm. For the other half, I just sprayed a 1.8 quart dish. So we're gonna put the rest of the recipes in this dish. And I do have my oven preheated to 350. Now this is what's gonna be the casserole. So all we're gonna do with this one, we're gonna melt a little bit of butter. We're gonna put the butter on top of these potatoes, and then we're gonna cover it in cheddar cheese. I'm telling you, kids and adults alike will love this version. I have 2 tablespoons of butter that I just melted in the microwave. I'm going to just flatten out my potatoes just a little bit, like so. And then we're just gonna brush this oozy gooey butter on top. Add another layer of richness, like we need it though, right? But it will be so tasty. Now you don't have to make potatoes this indulgent all year round, but you know, this is a specialty potato, so we're gonna treat it as such. And then we're gonna add some cheddar cheese to the top. Now you could put whatever cheddar cheese that you want, like sharp or extra sharp or mild. I'm just using a medium cheddar here. And you put as much as you want.
There's no real rule here.
So our potatoes are ready to bake at 350 for 30 minutes until heated. I do like my cheese a little bubbly and a little crispy on top, so I tend to put mine on the second or third grate from the top and cook it for about 30 minutes. And in the meantime, we're going to get our sage butter ready for the other half of the potatoes. One half of our potatoes, the cheesy baked potatoes, are currently in the oven baking. The other half of the potatoes that we're not going to bake are currently in the crock pot staying warm, and we're going to prepare the topping for that second potato. So for this topping, you're going to need some lovely sage leaves that have been well washed and dried. They must be dried, so really pat them dry and let them sit out so that they dry completely. You're going to need some butter, not the whole stick, and you're also going to need some olive oil. So we're just going to chop up some sage leaves. We're going to allow them to infuse in butter in a saucepan, and then once that's done, then we're going to fry some leaves in the olive oil to crisp them up. This is going to be a fantastic topping for your elegant potatoes. In a saucepan over medium heat, I am currently melting 4 tablespoons of butter. It's the same as half a stick of butter. So we're going to let it melt. When it's bubbly, we're going to add our sage. So we're going to add 1/4 cup of chopped sage leaves. And we're just going to let it simmer in the infused butter for about 30 seconds. Then we'll remove it and put it in a measuring cup, and it'll be ready to pour or spoon over our finished potatoes. Okay, our sage butter is ready. Now it's time for the crispy fried sage. So we want to make sure that our sage leaves are washed and dry. We want to set out a plate with a paper towel so that we can drain the leaves on them when we take them out of the oil once they have fried. So we've got our small saucepan, medium-high heat. We're going to let it heat up for a few moments. Let's add our 2 tablespoons of olive oil. 1, and that's 2. Let's check. I've got this little piece of a sage leaf. Let's check and see if it bubbles up. Oh, you can hear that sizzle. Okay, it's totally ready. Let it sit 5 seconds, then turn it over for another 5 seconds. Okay, and then we're going to remove it. We're going to let it sit on our paper towel and let it drain. Okay, we're going to add a few more. I'm going to turn my oil down. Now, if your leaves start to turn brown, that means that the oil is too hot. You may need to use your tongs or a fork to pull down the leaf while it fries. Flip it over. It should look dark green. Let it fry on the other side, and then remove them. About the time you flip them over, it's about the time to remove them. So you're just going to do this however many you want to do. I'm only going to do about 6 or 7 because we just need some for the top. Our sage leaves are out and are cooling and crisping up. Our baked potatoes are in the oven, but they're almost ready. So we're going to go ahead and prepare the other half of the potatoes, the ones that we've had in the slow cooker that have been just kept warm. So all we're going to do is just scoop these into a nice serving dish. All right, so we've got our second half of the potatoes scooped into a serving dish. So you could do what you want when it comes to decorating. You could do make like a little ditch and do like a swirl. Or if you're artistic, unlike me, maybe you could do like an outline of a turkey or something, depending on what you're celebrating. And then drizzle the saged butter in that little divot just around, just to give it a little bit of color and a little bit of some space for the sage and the butter to sit. See, look how pretty that is. And so then, you gotta remember our crispy sage. Oh, did you hear that crisp? That was a crispy sage there. So you're gonna take the sage that we've crisped up, and then we could just put them in the center of your bowl. Make it a little pretty, add a little bit of texture to your dish. And voila, you have your elegant mashed potatoes. If you wanted to, you could crisp some more sage on top, around, give it a little bit more texture looking around, a little bit more color. Also, you can sprinkle some salt onto your sage leaves, which I forgot to do, but that's something that you can do before you put them into your potatoes. So keep in mind, you don't have to keep these potatoes warm in the slow cooker. If you want, when they're done and you've already riced them and mixed them all up, just put them in a serving dish, have your sage butter ready to go, put it on there, and your potatoes are done. So that's our elegant potato, one of the 2. Beautiful, huh? The other one just went off. Look how light and fluffy they are. They're jiggly. Of course, they're still really, really warm. See, I just took them out of the oven. I left them in the oven for a little over 30 minutes because I wanted a little bit of brown on the cheese, and I want the cheese to be nice and bubbly. So there you have it. 2 potatoes, 1 recipe. All right, let's scoop out some potatoes from each one and give them a taste. Oh, you can hear that cheese is just a little bit crunchy, the edges. Ho, 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 ho. Who doesn't love a crunchy cheese? All right, so that's our cheesy potatoes. Look how nice and creamy they are. Look at that. Just oozes off the spoon, but they're not too wet either. All right, let's try the beautiful saged potatoes. Same creaminess, that ooey gooey butter and that sage. Oh, okay, now let's taste. Let's go for the cheesy potatoes first with the crunch. Oh, just cutting it's a little bit on the crunchy side. A little bit of cheese and potato. These things are so creamy. Oh, and that cheese just added just another layer of ooey gooiness to it. That's a good tasty potato. Super moist, super, look at that, just light and fluffy. I mean, they just pop up with a spoon. Take a look at that. Oh, those are so good. And now let's try the buttery, sagey, same potato base, butter and sage. That sage is really, really good. You know what? I'm gonna grab a bit of crunchy sage too from over here. See, hear that crunchy sage? Put a little bit more on top of that. Take another bite. You know, even though the base is the same, the toppings added just a different level of flavor to them, so they do taste like two different potatoes. Highly recommend both of these. If you're not a big herb person, go for the cheddar ones. Amazing. If you like herbs, totally go for this one. Amazing too. So there you have it, another holiday dish to tickle your taste buds. Hopefully these tips and suggestions will help make your potatoes this year extra special. Thanks for watching. The recipe for today is linked in the description of this video down below. Also, you have other alternatives for making these dishes and your dish even brighter. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, share it with your family and friends, and click the thumbs up button to let me know that you appreciate what I'm doing, and your support will help me to continue to provide content in the future. So until next time, go bake the world.